Greetings, ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to a light tank guide, basically. I did an artillery guide quite a while ago now, at the request of one of you guys, and it's turned into my most popular video. I have also been asked to do a light tank guide. You can blame the Silver Prince for that. And so, eventually, here it is. Originally, I wasn't going to do tank-type specific guides, but well, they've been asked for, and so why the hell not, basically. Couple of caveats out the way before we really start. One, this is going to be a long video. I'm going to put links in the description to different parts of it in case you're only interested in bits here or there. So if I forget to do that, by all means yell at me in the comment section and I will then put those links in. Secondly, I've still got a bit of a froggy throat, so I hope you will forgive me for taking the occasional drink as we go through, and there may also be the odd bit of coughing and spluttering. I am sorry about that, but meh, c'est la vie. Go figure. Like that. Are there any other caveats I need to get out of the way? Don't think so. So, without further ado, light tanks. Light tanks, as with all tanks in World of Tanks, you really want to be concentrating on those qualities which your machine has and trying to mitigate against its weaknesses. Light tanks take that to an extreme. They tend to be very fast and mobile with a kind of weedy gun and absolutely no armour. A Toyota Prius is probably better at bouncing shots than most of these machines are. So you need to adjust your playstyle accordingly. The other thing to note with light tanks is that at mid to high tiers they get pretty terrible matchmaking. They get what's known as scout matchmaking, which at the time of recording this video, it's gone through various different iterations, but at the time of recording this video it means that those light tanks are treated by the matchmaker as if they were one tier higher. So a tier 6 light tank gets into tier 7 games at best and tier 9 games at worst, the same as a regular tier 7 tank. So that's something to bear in mind. Now there is an upside to this. You get a credit, you certainly get an experience multiplier. There might also be a credit multiplier. Depending on what tier your tank is relative to the tier of tank you are currently shooting and damaging. If it's a lower tier tank, that multiplier is lower. If it's a higher tier tank, that multiplier is higher. So as light tanks are often regularly going up against higher tier machines, they get an XP multiplier as a result. The other thing to bear in mind with light tanks is, generally speaking, they're rather stealthy and they're quite hard to spot. And so these qualities kind of encourage them to be used as the eyes and ears of your team, as the scouts. And so a lot of people refer to them as scout tanks. I do not like that term, especially the way the game is going at the moment, because with changes to the maps and whatnot, and changes to light tanks in general, the old days of lights being dedicated scout tanks are long gone. A lot of the time they act more like kind of light assault vehicles. So, yeah, bear that in mind. I'm going to be mainly talking about those tanks at the mid and higher tiers that get scout matchmaking, because if you go down to the low tiers, in particular, tiers 1 or 2, then light tanks are just the generic combat tanks. There's nothing particularly special about them as a class in that sense. So I'm going to focus on where light tanks, those tiers at which light tanks really differ from their competition. So, let's have a quick look at the different light tanks from different nations and see if they've got a kind of flavour going for them. So I'm going to start off with the British and Japanese and just lump them together. The British and Japanese, have I got an example? Oh, the only example I've got to show you at the moment is the M2, which is a tier 2, but never mind, whatever. The British and the Japanese at the time of recording this video don't really get high tier light tanks. All of their light tanks go up to tier 5 at the best. I think the Japanese only go up to tier 4 at the moment. They don't get scout matchmaking, so they play much more like small medium tanks, so I'm not really going to pay them any further heed in the rest of this video. German light tanks, well, up to tier 6 they are fast in a straight line, but don't turn for toffee. The guns leave a little bit to be desired. They're relatively well armoured and so fairly good at ramming things. But then when you get to tier 7 and 8, and this is the RU-251, the tier 8, you lose that armour in exchange for greater speed and a better gun, basically. The Soviets are a bit weird because they don't actually have one continuous light tank line. They have tier 8 light tank, they have a tier 7 light tank, they have a tier 6 light tank, but then there's a gap at tier 5. This gap used to be occupied by the T-50-2, but that was removed from the game because it was, well, frankly, it was silly. I never played that tank. I'm sure there are many people who lament its loss. But the T-50-2 was replaced by the MT-25, which is a fat little machine. But the MT-25 was tier 6, replacing a tier 5 tank. So this left a gap at Soviet light tanks at tier 5, and that gap was never filled. So you don't really kind of get this continuous light tank line for the Soviets. What Soviet light tanks you do get, though, generally speaking, are fast. The guns, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good. The gun depression tends to be pretty terrible, and in some cases the armour is relatively good. The Americans get a lot of light tanks because they get their light tank line, and they also get an auto-loading line which has some light tanks on it. Both lines culminate in the T-57 heavy tank. So, American light tanks, generally speaking, they are either agile or fast, take your pick, i.e. either they are good at turning and accelerate well, or they have a high top speed. They don't generally come with both. They tend to be quite large, and so relatively easy targets, but they also tend to come with rather good, if kind of inaccurate, guns, and good gun depression, meaning you can use those ridge lines and kind of use that gun to actually put damage on the bad guys, which is nice. French light tanks. Generally speaking, these things are kinda sluggish. They're not the fastest machines in the world. The guns tend to have pretty poor aiming stats, and they tend to be kind of inaccurate. The whole flavour of these French light tanks is that they pack autoloaders, allowing them to do a lot of damage in a relatively short period of time at the expense of then having to go off and reload for an awful long time. So they get these magazine guns. For example, here you are, the AMX 1390 at tier 8 gets a 6-round 90mm autoloader. That is a very good gun, but does have its limitations. Last, but by no means least, the Chinese. Chinese light tanks, generally speaking, are very mobile, but don't have the best top speed. But they, generally speaking, they are very good off-road machines, so they tend to not be affected too much by dodgy terrain that they're driving over. Don't let these kind of domed turrets fool you. The armor on these tanks is not very good. They do tend to get quite large guns for their tier and class, so this WZ-132 at tier 8 gets a 100mm gun, for example. They also tend to be very, very sneaky. Their camo values are very good, they're very stealthy, but the exchanges that they don't get very good gun depression, which in some situations can leave them looking a little bit lackluster. And often, if you use those larger guns, the DPM on the machines is not actually very good, and the WZ-132 is another example where that is true. So, they're the different nations' light tanks flavours, if you will. So generally speaking, as a light tank driver, you want to be using your mobility to go around, attack people from unexpected directions, rather than engaging in a head-on-head fight. If you engage in a linear engagement, far too many uses of the word engage there, but if you do that with a same tier medium tank, tank destroyer, heavy tank, whatever, you're going to get the snot kicked out of you. You need to use that mobility to be somewhere else. Now, whether that's being somewhere else to then get shots into the bad guys, or whether that's being somewhere else to then spot the bad guys, whatever, but you need to be somewhere else. So use your mobility. A lot of people will tell you that light tanks are not very forgiving to play. I think you have to be a little bit more specific. I would say that light tanks, generally speaking, are tactically unforgiving but strategically forgiving. What the hell do I mean by that? Well, tactically unforgiving, i.e. you have terrible, terrible armor. And so generally speaking, if you misjudge where you need to go and you get ambushed by someone, then you are typically whole kinds of screwed. You can generally survive 1 or 2 shots from the bad guys, but no more. And so if you're caught unawares, if you're not paying attention, you can get punished very heavily and die very quickly. So they're tactically not very forgiving machines, but they're strategically forgiving. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say, for example, you were driving around in a KV-1. Tier 5 Soviet heavy tank. It's not a very fast machine. You go to where you think the fight is going to be the hardest, you go to where you think you're going to be needed. By the time you lumber into position, all the bad guys are dead, or all your allies are dead. You are now completely out of position, and ideally you want to be somewhere else, but you're not fast enough to be where you are needed now. You're kind of stuck where you are. Light tanks, that's less of an issue. As long as you're paying attention to what's going on, if you can identify a location that you need to be in, you can drive there fairly quickly. You can get out of trouble fairly quickly. And so that's what I mean by them being strategically forgiving. You can get your tank in the right position at the right time much more easily than you can in a heavy tank, but you have to judge where that position is, and you have to judge at what time you should be taking your tank there. And so that makes them quite difficult to play, but if you can get good with light tanks, it makes them rather rewarding, in my opinion, and an awful lot of fun to play. We can't... Well, no, I'll talk quickly about the sort of crew skills and equipment and consumables you want to be using in light tanks. So let's start off with crew skills. Well, Commander, Sixth Sense. You want Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense is your friend. And then camouflage. You could also look at recon to increase your view range. You will often be using yourself in a scouting role, so that's not a terrible idea. So Sixth Sense is a priority, and then kind of camo and or recon, depending on what you're finding is the most useful. I would probably recommend camo as your second skill, but that's up to you. Gunner. Why did I say driver? I have no idea. Camo, and then anything that's going to improve your accuracy on the move, or designated target, Deadeye is also not a bad choice. You increase your chance of module damage with each shot, and generally speaking, light tanks get rapid firing guns, so that's not too bad. Designated target is also a viable option. You make the targeted enemy visible for 2 more seconds, so that will make the enemy vehicles visible for a bit longer if you're doing spotting, so it will give your team slightly more opportunities to shoot them. Driver, anything that increases your performance off-road, so that's essentially off-road driving. Camouflage is your friend. I'm going to say that with all of light tank crews, camouflage is your friend, because your main defense is not being where the enemy's gun is pointing, you know, not being spotted, things like that. Anything that is going to improve your mobility or your accuracy with your gun when on the move. So smooth ride is a good choice, clutch braking is another good choice. Loader, well, loader skills are a bit naff if we're going to be honest. You can see here my loader is also my radio operator. Loader skills, who really cares, maybe safe stowage. Camouflage, again. Radio operator skills, well, situational awareness, I guess. Again, to boost that view range. The others are not particularly impressive. Really, radio operator, loader skills aren't the best, but situational awareness, camouflage, kind of what you want to prioritize. Maybe safe stowage if you find that you get ammo racked an awful lot. Equipment, well, this is going to depend a little bit on exactly the machine in question, but what sort of equipment do you want to go with? Well, I would say you probably want something that's going to increase your view range, whether that's coated optics or binocular telescopes. Whichever you use is going to be up to you. If you can mount it, vertical stabilizer is a good idea to improve your accuracy on the move. Light tanks do like to be on the move an awful lot. Are there any others you want? Gun rammer is also a nice choice to increase your DPM. Improved vents is not a bad option, but should probably only be used if you've actually got the slot to put the improved vents in. there are probably other things that you would use over this. So for example, coated optics is just flat out better because it just boosts your view range by so much more. You could make a case for an enhanced torsion bar on your light tank to try and improve the durability of your suspension so you get tracked less. Some people use that. I personally often don't, but I'll leave that up to you. And if you do a lot of passive scouting, passive spotting, and we'll get onto that in a moment, then a camouflage net is not a terrible idea either. But it kind of depends exactly on how you like to play your light tanks, and you know, and go from there. Consumables, well, first aid kit, put those crew members back in, is not a terrible idea. Repair kit is essential. You know, you get tracked, you want to no longer be tracked. I didn't really recommend at any point that you take the repair skill, so you really do want that small repair kit or large repair kit, whichever you're using. Fire extinguisher, you don't necessarily need this. Often light tanks don't take enough shots for that to really be useful, but I'll leave that up to you. You could opt instead for either one of the fuels to make you a bit faster, or for your premium food consumable. In this case, it's a case of cola, because this is an American machine, to improve your general crew skills, which will of course improve your gun reload, your gun handling, your view range, your off-road driving, your on-road driving, all of that good stuff. I will quickly also mention ammunition. Generally speaking, light tanks have small caliber guns with quite low ammunition counts. It's a small tank, you don't have space to store a lot of ammunition. This means that you often don't have the physical damage available to your tank to get those really monstrous carry games where you've done 10,000 damage or whatever. So you're always going to be reliant on your team to a certain extent, and if that makes you cringe, that's entirely reasonable. For this reason, often also, you may not want to take high explosive ammo. The thing is, you don't have much of an ammo capacity, and high explosive is very situational, and with small caliber guns it's not very effective. So for example, you can see here my T-37 carries 50 rounds of ammunition. I have 40 AP and 10 APCR. A lot of people often take far more premium ammunition than this because light tanks, generally speaking, have quite weedy guns, and the more and more wargaming fiddle with maps, the more they seem to be turning a lot of maps into linear corridor brawl fests, which light tanks are not well suited to. So some premium ammunition is certainly not a terrible idea, but I try not to carry too much because I think light tanks should, where possible, be flanking and shivving people from behind in the wazoo. That's my opinion anyway. Having said all that, you can't really, in my opinion, talk about light tanks without talking a little bit about scouting and spotting techniques. So that's what we're going to move on to next. So the rest of this video is going to show you examples and gameplay to illustrate the points, because I think that's a lot more instructive than listening to someone babble on endlessly. So let's talk about scouting. Now, I said light tanks I don't think are scouts, quote unquote. Any vehicle can scout. Scouting is just a role that a vehicle can take on. Having said that, light tanks are some of the best scouts out there because they're fast and stealthy, so they can get into those forward positions and see the bad guys coming. Now we're going to start off talking about passive spotting or passive scouting. Generally speaking, people split scouting up into two broad categories. Just before I go on, I should mention I'm not going to go into the details of how the camouflage and spotting system works in this game. If you are interested in it, and if you want to play light tanks, you really should be fairly knowledgeable about it. But go and check out a myriad of other videos from various people talking about it. I am going to not, because it would take me even longer, and you know, I just want to talk about light tanks in this video. But yeah, so light tanks are some of the best at scouting, even though they are not dedicated scouts per se. And generally speaking, people split scouting up into active and passive. This is an example of passive scouting. Essentially, you find a bush, you sit in the bush, you spot the bad guys. Now, in order to know what bush to sit in, etc., that requires knowledge of the maps in question. And some people will find this sort of gameplay incredibly tedious because you are essentially sitting there clenching your buttocks, hoping no one spots you, and hence no one shoots you. Because if somebody does spot you while you are passive scouting, you're stationary. Speed, which is usually your main, or one of your main defences in a light tank, is not an option anymore. You know. And it's this sort of scouting that really requires, or that most requires, Sixth Sense as a skill. Because then that will let you know when you've been spotted, albeit with a 3-second delay. And so you can get out of dodge rather than finding out that you've been spotted by using your face. So for example here, someone sent a shot over in my general direction. The AMX AC-48 is clearly fairly knowledgeable about his bush locations. He's got Sixth Sense, he knows he's been spotted, and so he is blind firing a bush. I know he's blind firing because I have not been spotted, because I have Sixth Sense. And there you can see he's whinging in chat, epic map with such retarded bot scouts. No idea what you're talking about, mate. It's worth pointing out, this was my first ever game in this machine, the T71. So, yeah. Now, I'm platooned up with a couple of guys. We've got Tesha in his Tortoise and Ghosts in his M41 Bulldog. Ghosts is kind of patrolling the central ridge here on Fiery Salient. So he's doing the active spotting thing, and I'll show you a video of active scouting in a moment. I'm doing the passive thing, and you can see the results for yourself. You know, these guys are toward the edge of what I can see. I mean, we've got camouflage in the way and all that, which will eat into my view range, but so these guys are mainly getting lit up when they're moving, when they're firing, and when they do these things, their camo rating goes to pot. And so they're being spotted by little old me. We're currently winning this game 6-1, and they're having the snot kicked out of them by the guys I have behind me with the guns. And one of the things you have to be careful of here is that you resist the urge to pull the trigger. You are spotting. I could shred this Bulldog by opening fire, but then I run the very distinct risk that I would get spotted and killed. And there you can see Tesha is actually getting worked over by the enemy tank destroyers back here. Now it looks like I did actually fire a shot off there. I'm not really sure why, but there we go. I didn't get spotted for it though, thankfully. So VK4502B. This guy has respectable frontal armor, side and rear armor not so much, but we'll see more of him later. The game, the score line here at the moment, by the way, is 10-1. I mean, this is a pretty one-sided match. And when you see the end results, you'll see that both myself and Ghosts pick up rather respectable amounts of spotting damage, which is nice. Or you may not actually see Ghosts spotting damage, but trust me, he gets an awful lot of spotting damage out of this game. I think he actually gets more than I do. And now Ghosts has moved up. We're approaching these guys from all sides. Now, this is a stock machine, so I was a little bit reticent about moving up because I'm not as fast as I would like to be. But eventually I'm just gonna go for it because screw this. Oh, especially as Ghosts just got wrecked by the Bulldog. But the Bulldog pays for it with his life. That just leaves a T29, VKB and an S51 remaining, and I decide at this stage to just go for it. So we've had it with all this passive scouting nonsense. There you can see I get spotted. And trying to use my mobility, although I'm stock, so it's not the best, but trying to use my mobility here to not get shot. Managed to dodge a shell from, I think it was from the VKB. And I'm trying to make myself a relatively difficult target to hit. I still take a 128mm shell to the face. And I'm coming around. This guy's keeping his armor pointed towards the biggest guns on our team, so I'm just shafting him in the side. You know, I mean, this guy's not doing anything wrong, well, apart from the fact that he was camping back here with the tank destroyers, and unfortunately I don't have the magazine to actually kill this guy, but there we go. In this particular engagement, he's not actually doing anything wrong, he's just completely screwed, and that was the game. So there we go. It didn't last too long, but hopefully that gave you an example of the sort of thing that's involved with passive scouting. So I got second class mastery, spotter, master gunner, fire for effect, blah blah blah. All very nice. Third on my team, ghosts came in at fourth on the team, despite the fact that I only did 900 odd damage, and that's because I got 3,539 assistance damage. The wonders of spotting people, and that was that passive spotting, and you can see that it's a very profitable thing to do. With a premium account, made a 36,500 credit profit. Even without a premium account, would have made a 22,000 credit profit, and that's in a tier 7 machine in a tier 8 game. And it was not fully upgraded, that's basically a stock machine. So scouting in general can be a very profitable thing to do, and passive scouting can be very effective, but it depends on the sort of map you're on and the situation you find yourself in, etc. Let's move on to active scouting now. So this video, as I say, this game is trying to demonstrate active scouting. So passive scouting is what we had in the previous game, when you basically sit in a bush, don't get spotted, light up the bad guys, they get wrecked. Active scouting essentially assumes that you have been spotted, and so you need to keep yourself moving. Now the image of active scouting that a lot of people will have in their mind is of running around a ridgeline or something like a mad thing. You know, the old T50-2, holding down the W key, never stopping, jinking, dodging, and generally being a little ninja. That is one way of doing it, but you don't want to be doing that. That's not suited to every single map. I'm not going to show you a replay showcasing every single different example of active scouting you could possibly have. We'll be here all day. But this is going to be slightly different. So instead of that kind of running around, constantly moving thing, you can see we are still moving, but we're going up above a ridgeline, spotting guys, and then falling back. Now you'll notice Sixth Sense hasn't actually gone off, so we actually did all that without being spotted ourselves, which is quite nice. You can also generally tell who has Sixth Sense and who doesn't, because the guys with Sixth Sense will back off once they are spotted. And, you know, there's actually 3 of us up here in IS-8, which is... Oh, I can see why the IS-8 come here, but it's perhaps a little ambitious from his perspective. Myself and an M46 Patton. Now, unfortunately, myself and the Patton are going to share some spotting damage here, but never mind. And I took a shot at that AFK Panther, because why not? Didn't do any actual damage, so just reloading the magazine now. And trying to keep these tank destroyers lit up for my team, in particular the artillery, but also anyone else with a shot. This game was played not that long after patch 9.8 came out, and of course this is the new Sand River map on Assault. We're on the defending team, and so people were still finding out which positions worked and which didn't on this map. And you can see that now, if you are on the attacking team, camping up there in tank destroyers is a terrible idea, because people in aggressive light tanks and or medium tanks will just wreck you. There we go. I put 2 shots into that SU-152 without being spotted, which is nice. I'm reloading the magazine. At least I don't think I was spotted. Don't remember seeing Sixth Sense go off there. So, trying to get some shots on the AMX 5100 here. But that looks like it's probably a rock in the way, if I'm going to be honest. And just trying to keep these guys lit up, but not staying still, because that just invites someone to shoot me. Even if it's just artillery blind firing the location. Object 704, I'm never going to be able to shoot that guy. And when you're in these situations, by the way, it's worth remembering that you can request fire on targets that you are lighting up. Or anyone's lighting up, but you can request fire on targets, and this is not a special thing to light tanks, this is just something you can do in general. The default control is by pressing T when you have your cursor over the target. Now, your key setup, your keyboard setup, key combinations might be slightly different, but the default is by pressing T. And now that we appear to have run out of tank destroyers to light up, we're going to be a bit more aggressive and kind of go hunting. Rheinmetall Borsig. Can we ninja the kill? Yes, we can. 5 shells left in the magazine, but because the magazine reload on these little 75 and 76mm autoloaders is pretty good, I'm actually going for the reload, you know, because I thought I would be relocating at the time, so I might as well. Ferdinand is over there, might be able to get some shots on him. Ah, there's buildings in the way. Jagdtiger over there. Let's go and see if we can find artillery and hopefully not get blatted by that Lerva. Or the Su-152. Oh, no, I tell a lie. Oh, he's dead. There. Well, we have found artillery. Whether that's what we were going for or not, we have successfully found them. I'm not sitting still to target these guys because mobility is my best defense, basically. Do actually take a shot there from a Leopard PTA who takes out my engine, so we're going to put that back in. Trying to move across the arc of that artillery piece to give him the hardest possible shot on me. Kill him with 3 shots. Take out his Su-14-1 friend, and now there's just the 3 of them left. Lerva, Tier 9 Waffle Thrower, and the Leopard PTA who puts another shot into me. So, reloading the magazine and going for the Lerva. And you can see here in both of these replays, we started off doing a sort of spotting thing, but then we kind of went to be more aggressive and to go and kill them. I mean, light tanks are pretty good at this sort of clean-up job. Lerva's fired, so we can put some shots into him. We tracked this guy as well. So all of this damage that other people are putting into him, we are getting assistance damage for, and he's dead. And that just leaves the Tier 9 Waffle Thrower and the Leopard. Reloading the magazine. These guys are completely screwed. And hopefully we're going to go and kill them. In fact, I may not even get over there to do any real damage, I don't think. But you can... you hopefully got an idea of the sort of things you can do with active scouting there. And of course, don't forget... damaging people's tracks, knocking out people's tracks can net you assistance damage as well. You know, things like that. Tier 9 Waffle Thrower, can we shoot him? Oh, come on, can we pick up the kill? Ah, boo, boo to my gunnery. Put a shot into the Leopard, he flubs his shot. It's just this guy left, let's speed this along a little bit. And there we go, he's dead. And that was the game. So let's go and look at how much assistance damage we actually managed to wreck up. Bearing in mind some of it was on that Lerva who we tracked at the end. So that was First Class Mastery, Spotter, Fire for Effect, and the Patrol Duty Medal. Finished top of our team with 1,258 base experience, 1,596 damage and those 3 kills, and 2,873 assistance damage. So some of that was on the Lerva who we tracked toward the end, but you can see there we got assistance damage on a whole bunch of different tanks. So that ended up being a pretty nice result for us. Again, making a rather respectable profit from that game. So we've talked about different types of scouting. Now let's kind of switch a little bit to light tanks, to the mobility and to doing damage. So as I said, we're now moving away from pure spotting. We're moving away from focusing on spotting and more towards doing damage in your light tanks. So this is the AMX 1375. The other pair of games you've seen so far were of course in the American Tier 7 light tank, the T-71. This is the AMX 1375, the French Tier 7 light tank. Not a particularly well-regarded machine, but there we go. Once again, I'm platooned up with Tesha and Ghosts. And this replay is much less... this replay is more about flanking and putting damage into higher tier machines and the the XP multiplier, really, that you get for doing that. Now, I do initially try and do a little bit of scouting, a little bit of spotting from this bush here. And we do indeed actually manage to spot... to spot a whole bunch of guys, which is nice. And You know, managed to pick up a little bit of spotting damage as well. Hurrah! But we don't actually pick up that much. I mean, this is not going to be a big spotting game. And it's worth bearing in mind that you don't get that much experience for actually spotting enemy tanks. You get far more for the assistance damage you get when other people shoot tanks that you are spotting. That's what really gets you the experience and the credits when trying to scout, not the actual initial spots on those machines. So, still trying to light some guys up. If that T25AT would get killed, I'd be quite happy, but I'm very conscious that I don't want to spend too long faffing around with this, because the T25AT, I mean, the other guys on the enemy team have now gotten themselves behind a hill, so the only guy I'm really going to be spotting here is that T25. He's a bottom tier tank destroyer. His threat level is not massively high. That VK went for our AMX-12T, but got absolutely wrecked for his troubles. So, scoreline is 3-1. What is it that I'm actually going to do with my tank here? Well, I'm going to try and use it more like a light assault tank. So, when you do this, you really want your targets to be distracted by by friendly tanks, so that you can go down and shiv these guys in the side and rear. So, IS-3 is engaging a WZ-120 here. WZ is, well, occupied with the IS-3. And so I'm going to unload into the IS-3's backside here. And this is mutually beneficial. I managed to kill the WZ, meaning that the IS-3 is still alive. So it's beneficial for the IS-3. And I was able to put damage in, so it's beneficial for me, basically. I was using the IS-3 to tank while I spanked, if that's a description you want to go with. So, having killed that WZ, we've reloaded our magazine. We're now going to try and get some rear and flanking shots into this M103 and ST1, and, oh, T28 prototype as well. Well, we need to think who we're actually going to prioritise here. Now, I still have most of my health. I can take a shot or two from these guys, but I don't want to be taking unnecessary damage. T28 prototype is focusing back on the targets in front of him, so I'm going to punish him for that. Put 2 shots in, and third one flubs. Can I finish this guy off? Yes, I can, but I do take a hit from his 120mm gun for my troubles, but trading that one hit for the kill, especially when we're winning like this, was definitely worth it in my opinion. Magazine is almost reloaded, and again, M103, we're just going to pull the same trick on this guy. Shoving shots in his side armour. One more to kill the guy. Someone else picks up the kill. So, reload the magazine. Let our more heavily armoured, more healthy teammates go on ahead, whilst we go round the flanks and the rear and try to mop up. Jagdpanther 2. Ooh, he's got a big gun. We don't want to get shot by that guy. Looks like he's fired. And I don't know why I'm even bothering to shoot at the front of a Jagdpanther 2. Oh, I managed to kill him. I am surprised. Well, that's why I was bothering to shoot at it. And there's just this T-43 left, who is whole kinds of screwed. He's looking at me, which I guess is fine. And he's dead. So that was much more about getting into people's sides and rear and putting in the damage where you can. And the fact that we were shooting higher tier targets nets us an XP multiplier. And that explains why we do fairly well in this game. It may not have looked much, but that was actually worth a first class medal. And we finished top of our team despite the fact that we only had 1565 damage and only 397 assistance damage. Didn't seem that special. But look at the targets that we shot at. M103, Tier 9, WZ120 shot at and killed, Tier 9, Jagdpanther 2 we killed, Tier 8, T28 prototype, Tier 8 shot and killed. These are all higher tier targets than us. And so there's that XP multiplier coming in to really help you out. And as I say, in that game it was very much about getting people's sides and rear and shooting them in them. And again, we made a profit, but you can see that these games were not as profitable as those games in which we were doing large amounts of spotting. Because every time you pull the trigger, you're firing credits out of the barrel, whereas with spotting, you don't have that issue. You're just, every time you get assistance damage, You're getting credits, you're getting experience, but you're not actually having to spend credits to do it, assuming you don't get shot. So yeah, there's that. So this was using a light tank as a flanker, fairly aggressive flanker, harasser, to try and put in that damage whilst enemy machines were distracted, and to take advantage of those distractions. In the main bulk of this video, I've got one more replay to show you, and then there will be a couple at the end, kind of as appendices. But let's move on to another game. So this time we're now in a tier 6 light tank rather than tier 7 for all the difference that makes. Again, we're back here on Sand River, and again this is an assault game, but we're on the attacking team. Now, this was very shortly after patch 9.8 came out, in which Sand River got changed. So I don't really know what I'm doing in a light tank on this map anymore, so I'm going to try some things out, and the point of this replay is to show you that kind of strategic flexibility I was talking about. The ability to relocate, be somewhere else, and be where you're needed to be. So I was wondering what it was I was actually going to do with my T-37 in this game. It's not a particularly agile tank. Top speed's pretty good though. And I decided to just experiment and come down into the riverbed and see what happened. Hopefully I can get some good spots from the riverbed, you know, by going up these ridges up to my left-hand side. That was the sort of thing I was thinking, but I've been spotted here, and it's quickly become apparent that the enemy team will have shots from behind me. You can see here I'm trying to wiggle to deny them shots on me. And I go up this ridge line in an effort, well, to not get shot in the backside, basically. So my initial plan has very quickly become unviable, or non-viable, whatever the appropriate word is. I can't do what I originally planned to do. So I'm going to have to think of something else. I'm going to have to find other ways in which I can make myself useful. So, one way in which I can make myself useful is supporting fire. If these guys go and try and kill... Oh, dearie me, there was a T-31. Sorry, T-34-1. And he took out my loader and put a big shot into me. If, you know, as you saw in the previous replay, if enemy tanks can be distracted shooting your allies, or trying to shoot your allies, then you can put shots into their rears. Now, I was going to try and do that. I thought the enemy might be distracted by that ELC, but you can see from the shot I took to the face that wasn't necessarily the case, so I decided to get out of dodge. I mean, I don't think there's anything else I'm really going to achieve down there, so let's be somewhere else. And again, that's the sort of thing that you'd struggle to achieve in something like a heavy tank or a slow tank destroyer. I don't know why I fired that shot there. I think my finger just twitched or something. Occasionally happens that I get a finger twitch and I fire when I don't mean to. Anyway, so yeah, if you're in a heavy tank or a slow ponderous machine and you get yourself into a position that proves to be untenable, well, you're going to really struggle, frankly. Whereas if you're in a tank with more mobility, you can run away and be somewhere else. So I put a blind shot towards that KV-85 because, why not? I might do some damage. And I am quite conscious throughout this game that this is an assault game, meaning that we only start off with 10 minutes to do our thing. And so time is very much of the essence. The problem is, in a light tank, you don't have the armor or the firepower to really push the tempo of the engagement. You have to kind of rely on your teammates to push the tempo and allow you to get stuck in at opportune moments, I guess is the best way of putting it. So I was just trying to see if I had shots on that jumbo. I don't, unfortunately, but that jumbo's getting worked over anyway, so that's not the end of the world. So far the scoreline is 2-3. I mean, they have 3 artillery. I would love to be able to get into their artillery park and shoot all those guys up, but to try and do that now would most likely be suicide. So I'm not going to do that. Have a blind shot, try and hit that WZ-131, not sure if I manage it. But there you can see the enemy T-34-1 is scouting very effectively. He's not in a light tank. You don't need to be in a light tank to scout. Anyone can do it. It's just some tanks are better at it than others. We managed to put one shot into that WZ-131. But unfortunately the others don't hit. It's just the one shot that strikes home. And I'm trying to bring my team's attention to the fact that WZ-131 is going to flank around our team and he's going to make a beeline for our artillery. I think that's fairly safe to say. And this game is taking a bit of a turn for the worse. And this is also the sort of thing you're going to have to get used to in light tanks, being patient and waiting for your opportunity to present itself, because if you try and force an opportunity, more often than not you're just going to get yourself wrecked. Unless you are very, very good at playing light tanks and you are very good at judging what situations do and do not provide you with that opportunity. Now we bounced on that Sherman Jumbo because his armor's pretty good. Managed to put a shot into the AFK Panther though, and here we're basically providing supporting fire for our team. We can't lead the charge, so we might as well provide fire for those people who can. Only track damage on the Sherman, annoyingly. But we managed to kill him in the end. Scoreline is 6-8, but we've used up over half of our allotted time to win this game, and there's the predicted WZ-131 going for our artillery park. Now it doesn't help that our Jagdtiger 88, well, he's not AFK, but I'm not sure how much attention he's paying to the map, or he might have had to go AFK or something. So I'm trying to shoot up this WZ while he's distracted by other people. Now the Jagdtiger's woken up. And I'm hoping the WZ is going to be concentrating on that Jagdtiger. It would be understandable if he were. The Jagdtiger is most definitely a threat to him. That being the case, oh dear, we take a shot in the side from that T-34-1 again. He's being a right nuisance. If that WZ is distracted by the Jagdtiger, I'm hoping I can get in, flank around, and shiv this guy from behind. Now this is a risk, because if that WZ is not concentrating on the Jagdtiger, there's the very real chance he's going to turn around and give me a damn good rogering, and well, there's the very good chance here he's going to give me a damn good rogering. Right, one shot on the move, second shot, he puts one into me, trying to use this speed to actually circle to death a WZ. Now, I'm a little lucky here, the WZ has only got the 85mm gun, which meant that I didn't take as much damage in that one shot as I might have done. It also meant, and the Jagdtiger thanks me, way. It also meant, I mean, the soft stats on that gun are not very good, so it also meant that he was struggling to actually get a shot on me. We have 3 minutes of this game left, and we're still 2 tanks down. But of those 2 tanks, we actually have more combat tanks than the enemy team, because 3 of their 6 tanks are artillery pieces. Now I'm hoping, I mean, look at my health, I've got 182 health. I can't really take any more shots from anyone really in this game. I can take a shot from the AFK Panther and that's about it. So T-34-1 is distracted by our Jagdtiger again, and it's a stock T-34-1, stock turret, and again using the 85mm gun, and with terrible aiming stats on that weapon. Now he's trying to do something about our Jagdtiger, and while he's doing that I'm trying to do something about him. Managed to put a couple of shots into him as our Jagdtiger slowly approaches him. Just lost our T-71, which is unfortunate. So now our Jagdtiger is going around to the left hand side. I was last spotted also around that side, so again, let's just approach them from a different direction, a different angle, use that mobility to be somewhere else. That's the thing with light tanks, you don't want to engage in these, well, linear engagements. You want to get people from behind, and there's one, and we're just going to go behind a dune, 2, keep moving, third one misses. Now I'm very conscious of the time here, there's 1 minute 30 left, and so I'm currently thinking, screw it, this guy needs to die, and then we need to go and kill the other tanks on the enemy team. 1 minute 20 left, there's an AFK Panther and 3 artillery, and I was about to take far too long a route in order to find and kill these guys, and there's a stealth rock. The problem is our Jagdtiger is going to struggle to get over there in time because he's slow and ponderous, but our T-29, to his credit, is already over there. So I'm hoping, against hope, that I have enough time to go and kill these guys. But I'll be honest with you, it's not looking very good. T-29 finds the Hummel. Hummel is on low health. T-29 executes the Hummel. 40 seconds remaining. And can I find the other artillery pieces? Jagdtiger has found the AFK Panther. Come on, come on. If that Jagdtiger can kill the Scout Panther, then we still have a chance with this. 20 seconds of the game left. And can I find their artillery? M37. Right, one shot in. Switch targets to the AMX because I'm doing a mission that requires me to shoot 2 different artillery pieces. Kill the M37. AFK Panther's still alive, and the game ends just before I can kill the AMX-13 F3. But the AFK Panther was still alive anyway, so yeah, we didn't actually have quite enough time in that game to finish it off, but we did manage to pull off a nice comeback. And we did spend an awful lot of time driving around, and hopefully I showed you that you have the mobility, which gives you the flexibility to get out of bad situations, get around people's rears, get around people's flanks, and just shiv them from behind, and try and use your allies as meat shields, basically. But it ends up being a mutually beneficial situation. If your more heavily armoured allies can take the fire, you can help them out and kill the bad guys they're engaging. That's the kind of deal. So let's go and have a look at the results for this game. So unfortunately, of course, that was not a win, but we still managed to pick up a bunch of different ribbons. 1,905 damage and 4 kills puts us very cleanly at the top of our team by experience, and only second when it comes to damage done, behind the T-71. Still made a profit for that game. So, I mean, light tanks can still be very profitable. 34 shots fired, 21 hits, 18 pens. A lot of those shots were fired on the move, so yeah, don't be surprised that a number of them missed. And although we weren't able to win that, hopefully that showed you, having travelled 5.5 kilometres in that game, hopefully that showed you that you can relocate easily in light tanks. And that it's the mobility that really is their key strength, in my opinion. So they're all the games I wanted to show you for the core of this video, I guess. There are 2 more games that are now gonna come that are essentially an appendix. I hope that in the gameplay I've shown you so far, I've given you a good idea of what you can and can't achieve in light tanks and the sort of things you want to look out for. But if you have any questions about any of it, of course, feel free to leave comments and I shall answer them as best I can. So, now let's move on to the appendix. Now, I said that for this video I was mainly focusing on the mid to high tier light tanks, the ones that get full scout matchmaking. And that the low tier light tanks were kind of generic combat tanks, since there wasn't much point in focusing on them. There is of course a grey area here, tiers 3 and 4. At tier 3, you are exposed to regular matchmaking for the first time, and this means you can meet some targets that are very tough to penetrate. KV-1s, those sort of tier 5 heavy tanks can be very difficult for tier 3 light tanks to deal with. And tier 4 is when you first encounter scout matchmaking, and it's with machines that often really have absolutely no right to see that sort of matchmaking. They just don't have the view range to outspot their targets. They don't have the gun to damage them. They don't have the mobility to avoid being shot. It's generally quite painful. So I wanted to show you some gameplay from those tiers. This is clearly the Panzer 1C. We're in a tier 5 game. Now, Panzer 1C's gun has 33 penetration, average, which is pretty terrible, and it drops off with range quite spectacularly because it's a little autocannon. I'm not using any premium ammo, but the premium ammo only gets 43mm of average penetration, which is still pretty darn terrible. So, what am I trying to do in this horrendously bottom tier game? Well, my gun is not going to be my primary weapon. My primary weapon is going to be the fact that I am spotting the bad guys. So initially, I'm just trying to rove around here, doing a bit of active scouting, just to try and spot the bad guys, see how many of them there are, and then get the hell out of Dodge. Scouting is not just about picking yourself up direct experience and credits. It's about letting yourself and your team know where the bad guys are as well. It's about information. And as anybody who has any military experience would tell you, information is paramount. And now, I mean, information is paramount whether you're talking about military contexts, industrial, whatever. Information is your friend. So, we went around there and found out that there were a couple of heavy tanks pushing down the 9 and 0 lines here on Redshire. We've since lost a couple of tanks. We've managed to claim one of theirs. You know, we're making some sort of progress. And I'm just trying to find something useful for me to do. Now, my gun is, in this matchmaking, absolutely terrible. I cannot emphasize how bad this gun is when you're in a tier 5 game. You really need to be very careful about the targets you find to shoot at. Now there's an M2 medium. I can penetrate this guy. He's only tier 3. But you can see how many bounces I get on his side armor. I just empty my magazine at him and then I'm going to reload it. Oh, we managed to pull the score lines back, so it's 4 kills apiece. So just trying to find those targets that you can damage and then damaging them, despite the fact that they are often not actually the most threatening tanks out there. But there's no way I can hurt a Churchill or a KV-1, although the KV-1's now dead with this gun. So trying to put some shots into a T-82 because the T-82 has pretty terrible armor. But you can see how many bounces I'm getting on that guy, and that's because I'm trying to shoot him at range. And at range, the penetration on your autocannons falls off at an alarming rate. Side of a VK 2001D. Absolutely nothing. I'm not even sure if any of those shots reached him to hit him, let alone bouncing. But that's the sort of thing you have to deal with. This gun is arguably overpowered when in a tier 3 game. In a tier 5 game, it's almost completely useless. I mean, I could be firing APCR here and it'd be a very expensive way of achieving basically the same thing. Which is why I don't bother. Matilda, nope. M8A1, I might actually be able to damage him if an opportunity presents itself. So, okay, the bad guys are pushing down the 1 line. This is not particularly good. So I'm thinking about trying to relocate to retreat from that region. But here's the other thing. We have a couple of tier 5 tank destroyers sitting up at K7. And if I can spot people, those two guys can shred them. You know, we've got a Stug 4 and an S35 CA. The Stug 4 is not a particularly good tank. But, wait, Stug 4? Well, the team list says it's a Stug 3. I remember it being a Stug 3, but the minimap says it's a Stug 4. Go figure. It's a Stug of some description. Doesn't matter exactly what one. So, if I can spot these guys, those two tank destroyers can do a number on them. There's the Sherman 3. I don't want to engage this guy directly because he will ruin my paintwork. But, tier 5 tank destroyer friends, all I need to do is spot this guy and hopefully they can do the rest. Oh, are we going to play Ring of Roses? Yes, we are. I am not engaging this guy. I am running away like a wuss because I am absolutely no match for a Sherman. But there was my artillery. So, he's dead and I'm not. And I like to think that was at least partly down to my actions. Now, it'd be really nice if we can spot some of the other tanks that were moving down that flank. Notably the Matilda now. And speaking of the Matilda, there he is. And I'm like, oh dear. Oh dear. Right. Thankfully, the Matilda has a relatively low caliber gun. It fires rapidly, but oh god, there's that M2 medium from earlier on. This is bad. So we're trying to just get in cover now and not get shot. And there's the M8A1 as well. Trying to preserve my life as much as I physically can. And going, someone please help me. I'm being chased by all of the bad guys. So we make it down toward the river, having only taken that one shell from the Matilda, somehow. I'm not really sure how. I thought it would have taken a lot more damage than that. But either way. We've only taken the one shell, and we're going to try and spot that Matilda. Oh, but we actually end up spotting an M8A1. Well, okay then. Chaps, I don't suppose you could kill this guy, could you? Trying to see if my own gun can do anything, and I'm getting the odd penetrating hit here or there, but nothing particularly spectacular. And then our Stug kills him. And there's a Matilda. Oh dear. Well, never mind. As our tank destroyers, remember those 2 tank destroyers I mentioned earlier on? Yeah. As they put the Matilda out of action. And I'm still alive, and that's the thing you really want to do with light tanks, just make sure you stay alive. You see so many people throw their tanks away at the beginning of a game by holding down the W key and driving straight forward into 15 loaded guns, which is monumentally stupid. Anyway, there's the enemy artillery, something I can actually potentially damage with this gun, but apparently I can't damage it as easily as I thought I'd be able to at this sort of range. So we had some shots at him, but now we're running away. And I'm just seeing if I can spot anyone, if I can light anyone up, and there's the M2 medium. And our Stug takes out the M2 medium. Now unfortunately, I think, have we lost? Nope, we've still got that S35C8. Yeah, on the team list, they're actually appearing as a pair of T67s or something. Oh no, I'm just being really stupid. I'm looking at the enemy teams. Why am I looking at the enemy team list? I'm an idiot. Yeah, we have an S35CA and a Stug 4. I'm such a moron. And a Bishop. Right, the scorelines are actually now even, which is good. On the flip side, it's 3 tier 5s and a tier 3 versus 4 tier 5s. T67 has terrible armour. He just got walloped by the S35, the bathtub of doom. And if I can get a shot on this guy, I might actually be able to nobble him. Send some shells over in that direction, but have I mentioned how bad this gun is in a tier 5 game? Yeah. Never mind. At best, I just tickled him. Not even sure if I hit him, I don't think I did. The crew didn't report anything. So we want to be a little bit careful about that guy. And we've got 6 minutes of this game left. I mean, it's a regular game, there's no particular time constraints to worry about. S35CA is moving forwards. And our Bishop was saying, you know, attention to a C5 over that area, and I'm saying, yep, I will be over there to spot, but I want to make sure that this T67 is dead first on the 1 and 2 lines. But it appears that guy's just run away. I can't really spot him anymore, so instead I am actually going to go and try and spot the fellows over towards C5, C6, or I was, and then I changed my mind again. Trying to use as much cover as I possibly can. S35CA is moving up. If he spots the T67, hopefully I can put some shots into him. Who knows, I may even achieve something. I know that's perhaps slightly optimistic, but there we go. I do like to remain an optimist. And I'm just trying to move up in parallel with that S35. Bishop is calling for attention over toward C5, C6, and yeah, fair enough. I'll go and try and spot these guys. So initially, I'm not just going to hold down W and drive into there because I don't know where they are. I don't want to be ambushed. So I'm just seeing if I can spot anyone from the safety of this bush. Apparently not, which is a little unfortunate. And then we're going to move up, and we're down to 4 minutes of this game left. We can't take too long about this. Well, we're just going to run out of time. And there's a very real chance that some of their tanks are moving towards our Bishop's location, which would be a little bit awkward. So again, just trying to use this bush and our binocular telescope, you know, passive scouting if you will, to try and spot some guys. And gradually making progress up this part of the map. allies are with me, so I have support. And at some point, I'm going to decide to kind of go for it and try and spot these fellows. These guys have really run away and managed to put themselves in a corner. I'm trying to ask my allies if they're ready, trying to indicate that I'm going to go and spot C5, C6, so I want these guys to be ready, pre-aimed at those locations, so that they can start pouring the fire in as soon as I light them up. Stug says, yep, so alright, let's try and go for this. There we go. T67, Stug 3, artillery. Managed to kill the artillery, but it costs me a little bit. I take a shot from the right. So that second T67 is over toward our bishop, which is kind of messy. Going for the other T67, but he manages to kill me. Now, I'm not going to show this match through to the end. We do actually end up winning this game. But hopefully you saw the sort of things you can achieve with a tier 3 tank in a tier 5 game. But obviously you need that support. You need your teammates to not completely suck, otherwise you're screwed, basically. But you can still do fairly well as a tier 3 or tier 4 tank in a bad matchup. But tier 3 and tier 4 in light tanks, a lot of the time, they're the sort of tiers where you hopefully work out the fights that you don't want to be involved in, if that makes sense, and learn when to run away. So let's go and take a quick look at the post-battle stats for this game. As I said, we ended up winning that game, and I got a second class mastery for my efforts. Finished top of my team, 386 damage, 1 kill, and 824 assistance damage. Picking up assistance damage on the M2 medium, the M8A1, the Matilda, and the Sherman 3. So that ended up being fairly respectable. We also made quite a nice profit, despite the fact that we died. Assistance damage is a wonderful thing. Now to move on to Appendix 2, if you will, and the last bit of gameplay I have to show you in this video. Last bit of gameplay for you. The point of this video is what happens when the matchmaker decides to screw you royally, if you will. So, with a lot of the games I've shown you so far, you know, they've been in relatively open maps, they've had good matchmaking, you know, things like that. So, you might be thinking, oh, that's all well and good, but what happens when things go bad? This is the AFK Panther, the Aufklärungspanzer Panther, Scout Panther, Fail Panther, Awful Panther. It has had a variety of different names. It used to be the Tier 7 German light tank. It's since been replaced by the Sparpanzer 1C. So it's not a particularly good machine. My crew in it is actually quite bad. The crew train themselves up from something like 75%, so the crew in this tank is poor. The matchmaking, to be fair, the matchmaking could be slightly worse. It's a tier 9 game in a tier 7 tank. This thing does see tier 10 games because of reasons. It's a city map. This is Stalingrad. I mean, initially I'm trying to come over to the more open side of the map to try and do some spotting, but spoiler alert, I'm not going to be having that much success. So the question becomes, what do you do in those situations when the matchmaker has decided that you're going to have a terrible setup, that you're that the map that is bad, you know, you're in a bad tank, you've got a bad crew, you know, you've got all these things working against you. Can you still do well despite that? Well, you kind of can. Now, initially this does not get off to a particularly good start. We've got an AMX 1390 who appears to be trying to hunt us down. And I was trying to initially just run away from this guy, but I'm very conscious that if I do that, our artillery is forfeit. And that's bad. So, as it is, with a little bit of help from some friends, I actually managed to kill the 1390. But then I do run away, because that type would otherwise just eat me alive. So this is not going to be a spotting game. This is going to be a doing what you can kind of game, and supporting those people that you can, when you can. So we know there's the Type 59 down there. And I'm just relocating to another flank, relocating to somewhere where we have a good concentration of friendly tanks, and where hopefully I can just get around people, get to their sides and rear, and work them over. Remembering, of course, this is a city map. So opportunities to do that are, well, they can be a little limited, and you have to be a bit careful as you're doing it. Now, the one advantage, I guess, of a city map is that it is harder for people to ambush you, because there aren't bushes for people to hide in. You know, generally speaking, as long as you're paying attention to the mini-map, and as a light tank driver, I cannot emphasize this enough, you really should be paying attention to the mini-map and what's going on around you. I'm not sure if I've mentioned that previously in this video. If I haven't, that's a bit of a failure on my part. Big, massive look at the mini-map banner needs to be put across this entire video. You need to keep your awareness about you. Anyway, yeah, on a city map, you kind of know the sort of thing that you're getting yourself in for the majority of the time. And so you can hopefully try and deal with that, I guess. So here we are. We're just trying to find shots of opportunity. T-34-3, we bounced on him. We're just running away from him, trying to put shots into him, and actually managed to pick up the kill on the guy as we go. Now, I mean, this is a fairly one-sided engagement as it goes, because our team is doing really well and they are picking up the kills where necessary. This T-34 is not T-34-3. This T-34 is looking at other people, so we're just trying to flank him, do what damage we can. And this is the sort of thing you have to bear in mind when you're on a sort of city map. A lot of the time you're going to be doing what you can. Don't expect to be soloing the entire enemy team or something. Oh, T-34's fired, but the IS-6 ends up picking up the kill. The pace of the game is going to be decided very much by the rest of your team. Those guys in the heavy tanks, in the tier 9s, you know, in all this jazz. You are just going to have to try and roll with that. Really. So, GW Tiger over there. Can we pick up some damage on this guy? Yes, we can. The reload on this gun was actually pretty good. He's already fired, so I'm not scared of this guy at all. One more shot to kill him. Well, he manages to knock away a chunk of his cover, which is perhaps not the most intelligent move in the world. But I don't appear to be able to shoot through this train wreck. There we go. And he is dead for kill number 3, and that just leaves the Type 59 sitting over in a corner, cowering, hoping we all go away and don't notice him. What do you think the chances of that are? Exactly. So everyone's just rushing over toward that guy. I don't think I'm actually going to get any more damage in on him. He's only got 41 health. I'm going to try, though. There we go. He gets killed. So that was just an example of the sort of thing you can do even when the map's bad and you can't do much spotting and things like that. So let's just go and have a quick look at the results of that game. So that was actually worth a first-class mastery somehow. Again, mainly because we were shooting higher-tier targets, I imagine. 1,677 damage, 3 kills, over 1,000 base experience, no assistance damage whatsoever. All of that experience and all of those credits were from the damage that we actually did. So there we go. That's all the footage I have to show you. I hope you guys found that video useful, informative. I apologise that it's very long. Like I said, I will put little links in the description to different sections of it. You may or may not be interested in bits here or there. But if you're going to take your light tanks out, they can be a lot of fun. Just bear in mind you are fragile, you want to concentrate on your camo, your mobility, and you need to keep your eyes, at least one eye, glued to the minimap to see what's going on and to see where you're going to be needed. And to then go over there and be needed there and be useful there. Run away from fights that you can't fight. re-engage people, get people from behind, get people in the sides. Don't get into linear brawls with, you know, other tanks. That's just generally speaking not a good idea. And do some spotting. Spotting is your friend. All that said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed that video, possibly found it informative. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel. And I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.